So I got some questions that were posted first, that were posted in advance of the class. So Penny asks, in upgrading Thesis 2.1, that the beta upgrade requires FTP and not the theme install. Do I know if it'll also be true for the final release? No, for the final release, you'll be able to automatically upgrade from the browser, right? I mean the desktop. You'll have the notification that there's an upgrade available, and you can click on it to upgrade now. Now you can also, if you don't already have Thesis 2 installed on your site, you can use that zip file and use the regular WordPress installation system, right? Add new theme and upload the beta version that way too. It's just the upgrade process is not automatic from 2.0 to 2.1 in the beta version. It will be automatic once it's no longer in beta. Okay, I did, you also asked me to cover responsive columns, and obviously I did that to a certain extent. There are, I took a look at your site. Let's just take a look at your site. It actually doesn't seem to me to be very difficult to do, although what you're going to have to do is create media queries for your 3 columns and your 2 columns, right? That's what's happening here, right? You're using a 1-column template on this page, and then you've got a 2-column pieces and 3-column pieces, and all you're going to really need to do is just create media queries that will allow these then to essentially stack on top of each other. If you review my class on media queries, or if you take a crack at it and then post some custom code that you're working on, I'll be glad to help you beyond that. But this is the only 3-column stuff you have that I was able to find, and this should be relatively easy for you to convert into Thesis Classic Responsive. So the other questions you asked, I'm going to answer tomorrow. Okay, and then Ron asks, should I be upgrading? Well, upgrading is entirely up to you. If your site's already all done and designed and you're happy with it, no, there's no reason why you need to upgrade. There are a few improvements, the authorship especially is a fairly significant improvement, and that Google authorship thing. And if that's important to you, then I would go ahead and upgrade from 2.0 to 2.1. But otherwise, 2 works just fine, except in a couple of very limited contexts. So if 2 is working for you just fine now, there's no reason for you to upgrade to 2.1, because upgrading to 2.1 means you're going to have to redo some of your work, right? So however, if you just started, or if you're partway through or whatever, then I would definitely upgrade and just transfer your stuff. Craig asked me whether or not I've ever gotten 2.1 to work in a local development environment, and the answer is no, but because I haven't tried also. I stopped trying with that with Thesis 2, and I see this question answered regularly saying, well, yeah, switch from a local to a regular one, and I don't want to have to try and solve problems that I don't realize are being caused by developing locally. So I always just develop on a live server someplace. So Laura asked how to set up a 3-column layout and how to use boxes. I think I've done a pretty good job of describing how to use boxes. The 3-column layout concept is something that's more advanced, and we may be able to talk about it tomorrow, but probably Thesis Classic Responsive is probably not a suitable skin for developing a 3-column layout in, because it has too much 2-column specific code. You're going to really have to muck about with it quite a bit in order to turn it into a 3-column layout. And I would suggest that if you want to use a 3-column layout, you pick a different skin that has the ability for a 3-column layout to be built into it. Now, my agility skin has that ability. It's also a 2-column layout, but it has built in the ability to switch to 3. But and if you want to do that, you can go look at, I've got videos on how to do that in agility. But I wouldn't I don't think I would suggest that you do that in classic responsive, just because there'd be just too many odd workarounds. Simon wants to know how much time for a newbie to get through Thesis 2.1 tutorials and build a website exactly like BYOB. Well, I would say in the first place, most people who don't get bogged down in trying to figure out lots of little details, but that work expeditiously on the stuff that really matters on their site, usually are able to build their site in 4 to 8 weeks. Some people catch on real fast or have real simple sites they want to do, and then 4 to 8 weeks is real easy. Some people spend a lot of time working on details, and details that seem important to them but probably aren't in the long run, and it can take you longer. To do what BYOB website does, I'm good at it and I'm fast at it now. I can probably create a website that looks similar to BYOB website in 8 to 12 hours. But to create a website that functions like BYOB website will take hundreds of hours. There's literally hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of hours of work done to make BYOB website what it is right now. And so if you're just trying for the look, once you've gone through the classes, the look should be fairly easy for you to accomplish really in the first class, because the look of the very first class I teach is very similar to the look of BYOB website. Different colors, different images, but still the same full width framework layout. But in terms of its function, a long time. I think I answered why skins are important. Skins are there in order to display, in order to display your content, right? The skin is what is the arrangement of your templates and your styles to display your content. And they fill in a role very similar to a theme in a regular WordPress theme, or a child theme in a regular WordPress theme. Adam, yes, obviously we've spent a bunch of time on responsiveness in this thing, and Thesis Classic Responsive will work just fine with that. Alan asks, is there an easy way to upgrade an older Thesis built site? And it depends on how complex it is, but we will be next week. I'm going to advertise a seminar on converting an existing 1.85 site to Thesis 2.1 and making it responsive using the classic responsive skin. So you'll get a chance to see what happens in an hour, hour and a half, something like that. Christian bought a Thesis responsive skin. He wonders how it will affect how it will be affected by the new release. The chances are your developer is going to need to make some changes. I would make contact with him about that and see what his plans are for changing. I don't know that developer. I don't know that developer, and I haven't seen him active in the community. I don't know whether or not he's played with beta yet. I'm pretty sure he's not on the regular development team of developers that test the beta stuff, so it's probably all new to him too. But I would just touch bases with him or her. Quint asks, will it work with Pod CMS? I don't really know the answer to that question because I don't know how Pod CMS works. I know once upon a time Pod CMS did things that WordPress couldn't do. But now WordPress can do all those things, and I don't know if Pod CMS has switched over to doing it the WordPress way or not. So, my guess would be that it probably works fine, but I don't know whether or not they use their own proprietary system and whether or not that proprietary system interferes with or gets or fails inside of Thesis. So, okay, now to the questions that were asked during the session. Tom asks, I'm currently using Advanced Custom Fields plugin to add custom code to the head and body of any page. Is there any way to do this in Thesis without a plugin? Well, in the first place, if you're adding it to every page, then you have, you have this site HTML head where you can add your own scripts, and this will add them to every single page. So it's the head scripts thing right here, and you can put whatever scripts you want, in the head of your page by doing this. In this case, it goes in every page. So if you don't want it in every page, I do have a box that on my site that's available to members. Let's see, what is that? Thesis plugins, boxes, and packages for Thesis 2. Hasn't been updated for 2.1, but I don't think it matters. I don't think it's going to need any updating. And that is the page-specific, it's probably done, yeah, page-specific head scripts box. This creates a meta box on your posts and pages that allows you to put scripts specifically for a specific page rather than all pages. But it's not. You don't need a plugin to do that. Let's see. Richard Brassaw. Oh, actually, Tom's got a couple other questions. Tom says that it'd be nice to have an option to use external images in Thesis Images library. Well, you can use external images to your heart's content. The Thesis Image Library is actually indexing their specific location. So the only way to use them in the library is to put them in the library. However, you can use an href. You can use as long as the URL is valid, you can use a URL to an image that is not contained in the image library or not contained in your media library. It can be contained anywhere, and have it be used inside of Thesis 2. You're not obligated to use the skin images folder. It just makes it easy for portability, but otherwise it's entirely up to you. Okay, Richard's got a couple questions. Good morning, Richard. I just unmuted your microphone.
Hey, good morning again. Great seminar.
Good.
I assume that the custom CSS is loading after Thesis CSS.
Well, it's very interesting because actually it loads in a sequence. So if we open up this css.css file, the first thing in the sequence is Thesis CSS reset. Okay?
Okay.
And then the second thing in the sequence, and you don't have any control over that. This is the reset, and Thesis writes it. Okay? Then
I'm happy with that.
And then once the reset's done, this is the beginning of skin CSS. Right? So the stuff that Chris wrote in Classic starts right here. And that goes all the way down to, let's see. Okay, and then we're down to his media queries. All the way down to here. And then after skin CSS, Chris has clearfix, which again are his own, this is his own CSS that's automatically added regardless. Okay, that is just like the every skin's going to have it.
Right.
Just like the CSS reset. And then after the clearfix, then comes what's called the Thesis CSS filter. And the Thesis CSS filter is where, for example, my footer widgets box writes its CSS. And that comes next. So everything that happens in the filter happens here. And then very last, which means that it has the highest authority, right? And it's the most specific then, because very last comes custom CSS.
Okay.
And in fact, he's given us a little indication of that. So custom CSS trumps everything. Now, a clever programmer can filter everything first and could put his own stuff after custom CSS if he wanted to. But this is by design, really. The intention is to give custom CSS the highest priority so that the end user can change it without having to worry about improving their specificity.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that because I had some funky things happen when I went into the packages and I was adding code in there. I it wasn't performing the way it should have. It was, I think, it's because of the way it was loading.
Yeah, it could have to do with the priority of the rule. And in Thesis 2.1 custom CSS, it has the highest priority.
Okay. On the when you're showing the design page, the sidebar, for instance, is there a drop-down menu as there was on the CSS page, custom CSS page, that showed you the variables?
I'm not sure which page you want me to show you.
Design, design,
No,
and go to this.
no.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you I'm going to create a cheat sheet for which variable each of these things relates to.
Well, I'm saying if you clicked on sidebar headings,
Yeah.
okay, in the text color, is there any way to add a variable there that, like in a drop-down menu? And if not, could you suggest it to Chris?
Well, no. The reason you can't is because this is linked to a variable already. This
Oh,
is
so it automatically comes up.
right. These things are all tied to variables. If a variable doesn't exist, they don't exist.
All right.
They specifically change the value of a variable. So
Okay.
then the question is, which value are they changing?
All right. And this is something I found in the packages. The packages were not always in alphabetic order, and sometimes you have to sit there and scan a long list, which I really like the layout now. Are those, do you know if those variables are going to remain in a alphabetic order? Would you start working with them?
I believe they're going to remain in alphabetic order once you start working with them. I think what they do is they display alphabetically rather than displaying by order of creation.
Oh, okay. That's good news. And also, finally, the Google fonts, are they included in the drop-down menu of the font styles available?
No, they're not. You're still going to have to add Google Fonts the old-fashioned way, except that there is a new Fonts API, and I will be creating a box that lets you, essentially define a couple of parameters, and then it will add that font to the drop-down list. But
Oh, that'd be cool. All right. Well, thank you very much for answering these questions.
you're welcome. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, let's see where Richard. Okay, Bob Horn. Good morning, Bob. I just unmuted your microphone. Are you with me? Please address it. Please show how to create borders around the container page and how to change its color so it's differentiated. Okay, well, I think I handled the differentiation part just fine. To add a border to it, for example, you just come back over to that custom CSS and I don't know, which one was it? It was container. So then you could say border colon. I'm just going to use the short version 2px, the shortcut version of the rule, 2px solid, and then pick a color. And in fact, I could also give it a border radius. If we save that and refresh it, so now you've got a border around it, you know, to the extent that you want one. Yeah, so that's how you would do it. You would, around the container, you would define a border and, you know, using the CSS border property. Okay, let's see, who's next? Okay, Joe. Let's see, where'd you go, Joe? Good morning, Joe. I just unmuted your microphone. Joe, taxpayer. Oh, I see. You said no microphone. Okay. Will I cover how to add a column to 3 from 2 since packages are gone? Yeah, like I said, you're going to want to do that in Agility or another theme, or I mean, sorry, another skin that's designed to do that, because you're not going to want to do it in Thesis Classic Responsive. And if you do it in Agility, you don't have to worry about the packages, because all you have to do is tell it how many columns you want, and it handles the rest of that stuff for you. So if you watch the videos on making a 3-column template in Agility, you'll see how to do that there, and there's just way too many things that are interconnected in Classic Responsive to do that in Classic Responsive. So Laura Burke. Good morning, Laura. I just unmuted your microphone. Let's see, what'd you ask? Question for when you have time. Is there a benefit to adding images through Thesis under Skin Editor Images as opposed to the media library? Not necessarily, no. Also, why don't you have all the menu items under Thesis Skin? Why don't I have all the menu items in the Thesis Skin? Okay. The first question was the images. Is there any reason why? Any benefit to using the images, the Thesis images versus the media library images? The only benefit is that it keeps them all with the skin. So if you're going to reuse the skin and you're going to export the skin and use it on another site or give it to somebody else or sell it to somebody else, then it's way better for the images to be resident in the skin. So that would be a good reason for it. But if you're just developing your own site or developing a site for somebody else on their site, there's no reason why you can't use the images from any source you want. Now, in terms of which menus you see here, that is dependent upon the skin you're using, because if the skin is not designed for Thesis 2.1, it's not going to have a design or a header image section. It should still have custom CSS, managed skins, editor, and content, but it won't have header image or design, because those things need to be implemented by the skin itself. And right now, the only skin that I know of that is absolutely ready for Thesis 2.1 is Classic Responsive. Now, I'm hurrying. Once I get done with this week, I'll be working on getting my skins up to 2.1 standard, so it'll work just fine in 2.1 too. But that's the reason. These design and header image are dependent upon what the skin author has created. So, Christine Bennett Clark. Christine, I'm going to unmute your microphone. Good morning, Christine. I just unmuted your microphone.
Oh, thanks, Rick. I appreciate the seminar. My question was, I saw that you have, I'm new to this. I've just signed up. So, will your training webinar for changing an HTML site to Thesis work? Will it still be appropriate for changing an HTML to Thesis 2.1?
Well, yeah, you know, I mean, in large part, the well, for all the hard stuff, you know, a lot of that class is spent, or a lot of that case study was spent customizing the appearance of Thesis 1.8.5, and obviously those things aren't the same in 2. So the way we styled the menu. I mean, the code will still work, but the method of doing it is different. However, the system of creating the development server, cloning it, building it out on the development server, the plugins that I used, creating 301 redirects, copying the develop site and back onto the live server, that stuff is all going to stay the same. But what's not the same is the part about customizing the appearance of the skin, because that's going to be different from 1.8.5.
Okay, yeah.
It's still it's definitely worth watching, because the part that people get the most tripped up on is not how do you change the colors, right? Or how do I put my header image in, or that kind of stuff. That's not what really trips people up. What really trips people up is properly making the transition from a live site to a development server, and then back from a development server to a live site.
Okay.
And that's the critical part of it. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Not right now.
Okay. You have a great day then.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, one last question. Penny. And good morning, Penny. I just unmuted your microphone. Penny Bear.
Hi, Rick.
Hello. So you wanted to know something about the media query?
Yes, when you just use that media query for the sidebar, so that it wouldn't show the colored sidebar in the smaller devices.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could just paste that code for me.
Sure. In the chat window, you mean?
That'd be great.
And the media query itself is in are in those resource files.
Oh, all right. I was going to ask you that, but
And down at the bottom, the resource files have the media queries themselves, and then the code snippets. They're not in the media query, right? They're organized by what the code is supposed to do. But anyway, all the code snippets are there too. So
okay.
okay. Anything else?
No, that'll do it. Thank you.
Okay, great. We'll talk to you later. Okay, Andrea's got a question. Good morning, Andrea. I just unmuted your microphone.
Hi, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. So, Thesis 1.8.5 question.
Yes. I know that when Thesis 2 was first released, it was said that the 1.8 track would continue to be updated. Does it look like that's still the case?
Well, will it still continue to be updated? I'm guessing that had there been a problem between 1.8.5 and WordPress 3.6, that Chris would have issued an update to 1.8.5.
Okay.
But right now, all of their resources are being spent on improving 2. And so I'm almost certain that there's been no action on continuing to develop 2 beyond solving, potential problems with it being, or conflict problems with WordPress itself.
Right. I only asked because I have a client who has a pretty extensive site on 1.8.5 and is probably not ready to pay me to put it on 2.0 or 2.1. So.
Well, I have tested 1.8.5 with WordPress 3.6 and it works just fine.
Okay.
So that's not gonna be an issue for you.
Okay.
And
just try to buy some time.
Yeah, right. Now, I don't know, how good the promise is, to come up with a 1.9 or something like that. I don't really know.
Right.
But I do know that 1.8.5 continues to function just fine with WordPress 3.6, and there's probably no immediate update in the future for 1.8 version.
Right. Okay. Well, hopefully 2.1 will continue down the quote easy track.
Yeah.
And then people will not want to stay where they are. So.
Right. That's what I'm hoping to.
Okay. This
Okay.
is a great series of seminars you're doing here, and I'm very happy you're there. And
Well,
just want to say that.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You have a good day.
Okay, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, let's see. Richard asks, will this afternoon's webcast be a duplicate of the morning's? Yes, it is a duplicate of today's. That is the morning. Yes. Yes. The evening session covers exactly the same ground as the morning session. Julia says, will you be discussing skin creation and or customization on Friday? I'm used to starting with Thesis blank so I can create the exact look I want in terms of columns. How will this work in 2.1? Yes, Julia, we will be talking about that to a certain extent on Friday. From your perspective, stuff really hasn't changed. The one thing that has changed, and something you'll probably really like, is that the developer's toolbox has the ability for you to copy templates from one skin to another. So if you've got your sort of base skin and you want to add a custom template, well, let's just say you've got a skin with all your favorite template styles. You can copy a template from that over to another skin. And so you can essentially develop a library of those things and be able to transport them back and forth from one skin to another, rather than, and these are totally different skins. So that's something that is new in 2.1 that should help you. But otherwise, if you're starting with the blank template, the Thesis blank is going to stay the same. It's going to be blank. And you can build your boxes, and you can use my boxes to build that stuff, and that stuff will all stay the same. Now, my responsive boxes are going to undergo a little bit of change, because you probably don't want to see their settings, over here in the content. Right now, you would see the settings for each of those responsive boxes under responsive skin content. Now, I'm going to change those options so that they're in a different location, although that's not going to change how it works, and it won't prevent it from working properly now or in the future. But I am going to set those options up so that they don't show up here, but instead show up under box options. But besides that, those boxes are all function the way you think they ought to. So not going to change much. Okay, Christine asks to just briefly discuss how a variable is created. So we just come over here to our editor and CSS and create a variable. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this background image. And so the variable will be, the reference will be background image. And then what I'm going to do is say background image, URL, background image colon URL. Okay, I'm going to save that like this. Then I'm going to go actually get the silly URL. And so you can see it's down here now. Go get the URL. Actually, why didn't I do that? Just come back over to my images here and grab an image URL. Oh, great. I didn't save that. Let's try that again. Or did I? Actually, hold on. No, I guess I didn't save it. So let's create the variable again. Background image. And then background image. then background image colon URL, paste that URL. Okay, so there's my variable. Save my CSS. Then I can come back over to my custom CSS. And then here, what I could do instead is insert. Oh, I've got two of them. Save that one. Save my custom CSS. Refresh it. And it stays the same, right? Because I can create any kind of, really any kind of code variable I want can be created here and stuck in place. I use it to change up my whole set of code, but I could just as easily have, you know, just done one piece of it, like is done a lot of times in the skin CSS. So, did that answer your question well? Okay, good. Okay, so that's it for these for this session then, unless anybody's got questions related to this class.